In the fight game, one must be at their very best in all aspects, and to keep a solid reputation is a delicate balancing act of every possible front. From the intricacies of wordsmiths on the microphone, the punishing but necessary nature of the weight cut, and of course stepping up on the biggest of stages to fight in front of thousands. To just be a professional fighter is an arduous task that takes its toll on the body and mind, and to be the very best, even more so. When faced with the tribalistic nature of the MMA fanbase, it can only take one minor slip inside the cage or out for the ones who once chanted your name to instead scold and taunt. And at the top level, those watchful eyes are upon you more than ever, eagerly awaiting for any modicum of errors. These are the UFC fighters who ruin their reputation in seconds. Colby Covington. Colby Chaos Covington's recent antics only prove the hypothesis further. Long since turning heel and becoming the pantomime bad guy, the American already had his fair share of enemies in the MMA community. Many considered his jokes a case of overstepping the mark, even in a sport seen as pretty lenient by today's standards.
Hey, let's talk about the lesson we learned tonight. It's a strong lesson that Robbie should have learned from his good buddy, Matt Hughes. You stay off the tracks when the train's coming through, Junior. Don't matter if it's a Trump train or the Colby train. Get out the way!
But by 2023, on the whole, Colby had garnered a sizable fan base of genuine admirers, supporting a man who, although entertaining enough on the mic, had earned the respect by paying with blood. His two infamous wars with Nigeria's Kamaru Usman standing tall as some of the greatest bouts ever. He may have been on the losing end of both, but the villain act had worked in one way or another, his stock at an all-time high. And it, of course, gave us golden moments like this.
Now, tell me what happens next time.
I'm knocking your ass out. You're going out cold. I guarantee it. Just like I wobbled you. I know you lost all those brain cells. I know you're dimensional right now and delusional. Wait till I see you next time, Marty Fake News. You better train hard. Keep doing that EPO. Keep it up. I don't need nothing. This is raw American steel. I got the President of the United States. Dragon energy. When I see you. When I see you.
But it would be an announced title shot against welterweight champ Leon Edwards that would signal the first new wave of hatred. With just one win over an aging Jorge Masvidal nearly 2 years prior, it was a cold and shut case of Dana White privilege striking once more. But Colby would be the architect of his own downfall when the dust finally settled. UFC 296, and the final card of the year, Covington would leave no stone unturned in ensuring he would get under his opponent's skin, crossing every moral and ethical boundary possible.
Stupid, on Saturday night, I'm going to bring you to a place you never want to be. I'm going to bring you to 7th layer hell.
Okay.
No, I'm bringing you to 7th layer hell. We'll say what's up to your dad while we're there.
Oh!
It was extreme, even by his standards, and led to the outcry from just about anyone and everyone, fighters and fans alike. And when Sean Strickland, who's hardly the bastion of morals, is publicly shunning you, it's fair to say you've overstepped the mark.
Let me give you some facts on Colby. If you know Colby on a personal level, he f***ed over everybody he knows. And I take Colby as a personal insult to me. And him making fun of Leon's dad, that is the biggest move you can do. He raised the boy to win a title, to be a good man. And a real American would applaud him for that. They wouldn't tear him down for that.
To turn heel can come with all of the fame and notoriety, but the Achilles heel of such an act is that the stakes are raised. All eyes are on you, with most of them tuning in to see you lose. To talk a big game in the build-up as if a win is nothing less than certain means that in the case of a humiliating loss, the downfall is sweeter than most. And for Covington, his time had finally run out. In a disciplined performance, the Englishman would remain composed despite the heated build-up, dominating Colby on the feet and in his realm of wrestling. With a third title fight loss in front of his idol Donald Trump, his world was unraveling before his very eyes. But the fans in the arena who had cheered him on 25 minutes earlier would now fill the air with a chorus of boos.
You know, I've had a long layoff, so I think a little ring rust had to do with it. But I also want to shout out Donald Trump. You can delay us, but you can't deny us. He's going to make America great again. We need these borders secure. We need inflation down, and we need America first again. Donald Trump's the only one that's going to do that again. Trump 2024. God bless everybody for coming out. Thank you all for your support. Thank you all for the hate. You're all a bunch of broke anyways. You.
Whilst Colby's reputation would in the end be shattered due to his on-the-mic antics, England's Paul Daly would be a case of an in-the-cage altercation. Once one of the most revered athletes coming out of the UK, Daly was, to put it simply, a bulldozer. Fighting a who's who in the early days of MMA, his explosive frame and KO power would grant him regional success in various promotions, garnering a respectable record of 21-8. This would be enough to land him a chance with the UFC in 2009, one that he would take emphatically. The 4-fight knockout streak would gain the respect of fans, fighters, and critics alike, as he made his name on the global stage.
That motherfucker can hit.
He can. Woo! Yeah, for about a minute and a half, and then you just break his will.
Well, his grappling has always been his Achilles heel, but god damn, that left hand is a missile.
Yeah, that Lorenz Larkin fight where he like knocked him out on his feet, and he was just kind of like there, but not really there.
Paul Daly can do that to anybody. His that left hand he has.
His warpath would put him in a title fight eliminator against infamous mainstay Josh Koscheck at UFC 113. To win would mean a matchup against the now legendary Georges St. Pierre for the strap, chance at glory, and to immortalize himself in the history books. But what would unfold was far worse than any brutal knockout or submission loss, and it would all be at the hands of Daly himself. When the final bell would sound in a fight Daly knew he had lost on the scorecards. As the two separated, Daly would swing wildly for his opponent, just barely missing with a left hook. With the ref subduing him and the skirmish now over and diffused, Dana White would scold him in the post-fight presser. A company-first repercussion and a moment that to this day remains one of the sport's most iconic.
Dana, can I have you follow up on that incident?
He's done. I don't give a shit if he's the best 170-pounder in the world. He'll never come back here again.
Listen, many people know I'm probably one of the most lenient guys in sports, and it's probably one of the most lenient organizations. The way that I look at these guys is, yes, they're professional athletes. At the end of the day, they're human beings, and everybody makes mistakes. We all make mistakes, but there's no place in this sport or this business for stuff like that.
With some of the crazy antics fighters are able to get away with in the modern game, it's fair to say the punishment was admittedly harsh in hindsight. But Dana has remained true to his word, at least in this instance, with Daly never returning to the UFC despite success elsewhere. Inches away from fighting for gold, Daly's career will now largely be known to the casuals as the guy who was kicked out of the UFC.
He got kicked out of the UFC basically forever, and now you see like Conor throwing dollies through windows and all this shit. I'm like, well, what about Paul Daly?
What about that,
Paul Daly's got to be going, what the fuck, man?
TJ Dillashaw. Now long past his prime, TJ Dillashaw was once a household name of the bantamweight division. A two-time champion, he was charting his course towards the Hall of Fame, besting his teammate turned enemy Cody Garbrandt twice for the throne in an epic rivalry, as well as dispatching Renan Barão in one of the sport's greatest upsets. He did maintain a reputation as a fierce and perhaps overzealous competitor, giving him the nickname Killashaw by training partners, but to the fans, he was applauded for it, bringing the art of violence in an express package every time he entered the octagon.
TJ was never the best teammate. He would like try to hurt people. He's a very competitive guy, and he has a temper and like
Try to hurt people how?
Cheap shotting.
Cheap shotting.
Cheap shot your house.
We always used
At the end of the bell, boxing, he knee ya.
He's just got a temper.
That's why you called him Killashaw?
Yeah, Killashaw, Dillashank, like all that kind of stuff. I mean, that was his thing, you know. He had
So
to like
just
watch
super
it.
competitive, aggressive guy.
And cheap shots, yeah.
His unwavering mindset led him to seek further glories, moving down to challenge for double champ status at 125 pounds. Now, generally speaking, in a super fight like this, the challenger moves up a weight class, so TJ's scenario was a new challenge for the fighter and the UFC. It's no secret he was already huge for bantamweight, so when the fight was made, the burning question was of course if he could even make the scale. Unbeknownst at the time, TJ had made the ultimate binding pact, ensuring that his career would forever be tarnished with an unshakable reputation. There's one thing to become a champion and chart a legacy, but to be caught using steroids is the Achilles heel that when found can undermine it all. And following the bout against Henry Cejudo, in which he would go on to lose, he would have to face the music and own up to his mistake.
I was so into doing something that has never been done before. You know, not the two champs. Obviously, I wanted that more than anything. I wanted to prove I'm the best in the world, but was also to drop that weight class. I decided to take something I knew I wasn't allowed to take. It's called Procrit. It is a anemia medication. I'm not mad I did it because I don't think I could have taken the fight. I'm obviously going to own up that I cheated, I got caught. And it's a rough one, man. It's hard not to hate yourself a little bit, you know?
The die had been cast, and the MMA community would have their say, denouncing his previous nickname and replacing it with the aptly named Dillashaw. The once bantamweight king had been branded forever, his reputation now in tatters. But the collapse of Ben Askren's reputation would not be due to cheap shortcuts, rather a decline of fighting ability. Similar to that of Colby Covington, Ben Askren was a household name largely in part due to his deftness on the microphone and in front of the cameras. With admittedly less brutality in his words and rather a playfulness akin to that of Chael Sonnen, Ben Askren had become a fan favourite even before his long overdue appearance in the UFC. And when he would finally make his mark in the premier promotion in 2019, he would do so to heavy fanfare. Even if ability-wise he was past his prime. Whilst his fighting abilities had clearly declined, his trash talk and general media savviness certainly hadn't.
Can you imagine like a 75-year-old Dana sitting there? Do you smoke cigars, drink whiskey? You do something probably, right? No. Hey, okay, well imagine you're smoking a cigar, sitting in your port 75 thinking, you remember when those guys thought Askren was gonna come here and then I got his ass kicked 3 times?
After a controversial win over Robbie Lawler, Ben would be paired with the rising Jorge Masvidal, a company mainstay who had now hit his fighting prime, most recently with the baptism of Darren Till in enemy territory at UFC London. And as expected, Ben Askren would launch a full-on offensive at the press conference and build up in true funky fashion.
And George needs to know, I don't get full on a 3-piece and a soda. He better bring the whole damn family meal for that night. You are not really secure with your own masculinity that you see. Oh my God, he said something. I need to go prove I'm tough. Hi-yow, I am tough.
I'm sure you know the rest. On the biggest of stages, Masvidal would be the architect of arguably the sport's most iconic knockout, recording it as the fastest in history with a devastating flying knee.
Again. The fight clock is brought to you by Modelo.
A highlight reel KO that would haunt Ben for years. His reputation as a fierce, relentless wrestler had been shattered in 3 seconds. And that wouldn't even be the end of it. A loss to Damian Maia would see the American retire from the sport entirely.
I mean, we've seen Maia.
Before a boxing money fight with none other than Jake Paul would mark the final bloodstained chapter on a once spotless and adorned career.
Jake, if you and I ran into each other in the back alley in Las Vegas and I wanted to do a homicide...
Do it right now then. We're running into each other right now. Come on.
Someone's going to stop you. You got like 27 people. Jake thinks he's a high-level boxer. I think he's fairly delusional. I guess we'll find out.
Pascal and also cruiserweight contender. Get my motherfucking money, Jake! Get my motherfucking money, Jake!
But unlike the playful trash talk of Ben Askren, a fighter with a far more sinister reputation was that of Lee Murray. With just one official fight in the UFC, you may be wondering how he even makes this list with barely a reputation to begin with. Well, when your street fight with former champion Tito Ortiz becomes the stuff of folklore before you even sign to the promotion, the nature of his infamous character is pretty obvious.
Tito Ortiz came running past me, ripping his jacket off, and he was going after Lee Murray. There's Lee Murray backing up, ripping his jacket off. Tito threw a 3-punch combination. Lee Murray ducked out of the way of every punch and returned fire through about a 5-punch combination, and every single punch landed.
And when he would eventually get the call from Dana, his walkout against Jorge Rivera would be a harrowing premonition of what was soon to come. Walking out in a criminal jumpsuit akin to that of Hannibal Lecter's, it was one of the first true instances of showmanship in the UFC's early days, and at the time, a breath of fresh air against a sea of stone-faced athletes. But make no mistake, when the cage door shut, Lee Murray would become exactly that, pulling off an undeniably slick armbar to claim a debut win. Unsurprisingly, the call-out of the in attendance Ortiz would strike all of the right chords.
Ortiz. T. Ortiz. T. Ortiz. If he wants to fight me here, I'll fight anybody. I don't care who they are, what they've done. My name's always going to be in the back of his head until he gets in here and tries to shut me up, if that's what you think you can do.
But sadly, it would be a matchup that would never come to a head. Leaving the sport due to compounding personal issues, Murray would never see the inside of a UFC octagon again. But it would be his following and final act that would be his swan song, shattering his fighting reputation, or in some people's eyes, immortalizing it. Moving to a life of crime, Lee would assemble the heist of a lifetime, stealing over $100 million from a cash depository without raising an alarm. This would make it the largest cash heist in UK history, and even after being eventually caught and sent to prison, 32 million of the sum remains uncovered. And the act itself ensured that for better or for worse, Murray would always be remembered by the UFC for doing the unthinkable.